Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. How is it going? So, if you're anything like me, and I suspect you are, aren't you? Then you probably have a lot of eyeshadow, both in a single form as well as in a palette form. And if you're even more like me, then you probably like to sometimes sit in your makeup chambers, quarters, room, whatever you have at your disposal, and you like to just take things out, swatch them on your hands, and marvel at their beauty. I like doing that sometimes for no other purpose than to just swatch colors, compare them against each other, be reminded of eyeshadows that I don't use as often so that I take them out of my collection and put them in my rotation. But anyway, while doing this very fun exercise, every now and then I think, wow, this is such a unique color. And obviously, while the idea for this video is by no means unique because I think other people have done it as well, today I wanted to share with you the eyeshadows that I feel are the most unique in my collection. Obviously that's very arbitrary because we all would view unique colors in different ways depending on what our collections are, what we think are unique colors, you know, because maybe for you an aqua blue is a unique color in your collection, but something like that would never be a unique color in my collection because I have like tens and thousands of them. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get what I mean. So with that in mind, I have collected here a number of single eyeshadows as well as a couple of palettes that I wanted to show you that I feel like are, you know, eyeshadows that are very unique to my collection, and I feel like they would be unique to a lot of other people's collections just because I don't think companies do these kind of colors very often. I hope you find inspiration from it. Maybe you find a color here that you always wanted to have and you didn't know that it existed, that kind of thing. So, you know, let's just do a little bit of swatching and have some fun together. Alright, so as far as the single eyeshadows that I want to talk about today, I've collected a number of them here in my little Z palette here, and they're kind of like separated by brands so that I don't lose track which one is from which brand. I wanted to start off by saying that I actually don't have a very large single eyeshadow collection, or at least not in a pressed form. I'm not going to talk about my loose indie eyeshadows because otherwise this video is going to take us 150 years long. I could probably do that another time, but for now I just wanted to focus on pressed eyeshadows. And I'm going to start with the eyeshadows from Anastasia Beverly Hills, which are the two over here on the top left corner of my Z palette. And the reason I want to start with those is because I kind of like started thinking of this whole video idea when I received this eyeshadow. So this is Pink Champagne from Anastasia Beverly Hills. For those of you who have been collecting Anastasia palettes for a really long time, you might even have this shade in several of your older ABH palettes. I have only been collecting Anastasia, well, I'm not collecting, but I've only like been purchasing Anastasia palettes since Modern Renaissance, so I never really had this eyeshadow in another eyeshadow palette, and I ordered it because it looked like a very interesting shade from the swatches online, and it is indeed one of the most unique eyeshadows that I have ever seen. I feel like ABH has done a pretty good job in describing this shade, so I'm not going to waste my time trying to describe it better than that. It is indeed Pink Champagne. It is absolutely stunning, and trust me, if you are someone who enjoys having really unique eyeshadows and you enjoy a metallic foiled formula, you are really going to like this shade. I have nothing quite like it in my collection, and I haven't seen anything that's quite like it also from other mainstream companies. So the second eyeshadow I wanted to mention from Anastasia is this color over here. It is called Truffle Glitter, and Truffle Glitter is, I don't know, it's a color that's very difficult for me to describe because it looks like it has a little bit of like olive taupe tones to it. I don't know whether there's a better way to describe it, but to me personally it really looks like an olivey taupe kind of color. I don't have anything quite like it in my collection, and I think it's a really unique shade because it's not really brown, it's not really taupe, it's not really golden, and it's not really olive. It's something in between, and I think that's what makes it so special and unique, not to mention that it's in the beautiful like foiled metallic formula of Anastasia, and it looks absolutely stunning when you put it on your eyeballs. Alright, the next eyeshadow I want to talk about is from Color Drain, and it's one that's kind of in the same lines as Truffle Glitter, only slightly different, and that is the shade Golden Olive. It looks like this, and just like with Truffle Glitter, it's very hard for me to describe this shade because I feel like Color Drain has done a pretty good job naming this shade in what it is exactly, and it is exactly a golden olive shade. It's not quite a green olive, but it's also not quite golden or brown. It's like something in between. I don't think I can do a better job than Color Drain in describing this shade, so I'm gonna say this is really exactly what they say. It is a golden olive shade. It's quite unique. I have nothing quite like it, and I really enjoy this shade. I have it a little bit on my lower lash lines today, and I've worn it a couple of times on my lids as well, and I can tell you, I have a lot of eyeshadow and nothing's quite like Golden Olive from Color Drain. Again, a really beautiful metallic foiled shadow formula if you're into that. Next up, I want to talk about two eyeshadows from Makeup Geek that I feel are very unique to my collection, and these are the two eyeshadows that I have over here in the right corner of my Z palette. One of them is in their foiled formula, the other one is just in their regular line. The foiled eyeshadow I want to mention is named Untamed, and Untamed is the most beautiful orangey gold that I have in my collection. I don't really wear gold much because I don't really think it flatters me much. I tend to gravitate more towards like bronzy and orangey tones, and I feel like a shadow like this, which is something in between a gold and an orange, really flatters me and looks really good on my eyes. And to be honest with you, even though I've seen a lot of oranges and a lot of bronzes and a lot of golds in my life, nothing's quite like Untamed. Not to mention that because it's a foiled formula, the eyeshadow looks absolutely stunning on your eyes. Look at this sheen. Can you see that? It's insane. And the next shade from Makeup Geek I want to mention is one that I don't really hear people talking about, but every time I swatch it, I feel like, darn, why does nobody ever talk about this eyeshadow, because it is so beautiful. And that is the shade Pixie Dust. I've had this eyeshadow pretty much since the beginning of Makeup Geek, and I do think they still offer it. I'm not quite sure. This eyeshadow, first of all, has an absolutely spectacular formula. It really feels to me like a foiled eyeshadow, but the color is just the most beautiful chartreuse lime green eyeshadow. It looks like this, and it is also the eyeshadow that I have in my inner corners today. I don't know, I feel like this is a very unique shade. I don't have anything quite like it, and trust me, I like chartreuse green, so I do collect chartreuse greens. Nothing's quite like Pixie Dust. Moving on to a couple of Luxie eyeshadows that I have here that I feel like are very unique to my collection, and I would like to show and swatch for you. The first one is called Firefly. Is this shade over here. I believe Firefly is one of her auroras, so one of the duochromes in a very like metallic and foiled formula. I love me a red eyeshadow and I love me a bronze eyeshadow, but when you mix the two together in this formula, this eyeshadow is so warm and so delicious. If you like wearing metallic reds and you like bronze and you would like the two of them to be combined, then you need this eyeshadow. What makes this eyeshadow so unique and special is not so much the fact that it's a metallic red. I think you can find metallic reds on the market, but that beautiful, delicious, warm, bronzy shift is just to die for. I really like this eyeshadow. Next up, we have an eyeshadow that I've definitely mentioned several times on my channel before, from Luxie Beauty, and that is the shade Lemon Drop. Lemon Drop, I think, is also one of her auroras, and I don't know, it doesn't look like anything too special in the pan. It just looks like a very light pastel yellow, and it is a very light pastel yellow. It has a little bit of a pink duochrome to it, but it just looks so fresh and so summery and so just, you know, happy when you put it on your eyes. I absolutely love this eyeshadow. I've talked about it so many times. I don't know if the swatch really does it justice, but if you put it on your eyes, this eyeshadow just looks so beautiful and so happy and so summery. I love wearing this eyeshadow. And I don't know whether you can already see what a very significant dip my eyeshadow has in it, and I've only had it for a couple of months. But the next eyeshadow I want to mention is one that is not necessarily super unique in terms of its color. It's basically like this ghostly violet blue duochrome. This is the shade Frostbite, by the way. I don't even think it's one of the auroras. I think it's one of her regular eyeshadows. I don't know whether you can tell what a beautiful duochrome shade this is. Not even sure it's going to like swatch very well. It looks beautiful, by the way, if you put it in your inner corners. Look how pale and ghostly. I think you can use this as a topper shade, you can use it in your inner corners. If you're feeling particularly adventurous, you can also use it as a brow bone highlight or as a cheek highlight. I think this is such a special shade. I have a lot of like blurply type of duochromes, and yet this one is something I don't quite have, and it's just, I don't know, there's something very unique about it. The last eyeshadow I wanted to mention from Luxie Beauty is Dollface. Dollface is the most beautiful rose gold shade you have ever seen. And just like with a lot of other shades, rose golds are not particularly a very unique color, but this one has the most amazing sheen and sparkle to it. When you put it on your eyes, it literally glows. The problem is, it has a slightly more like chunky formula. I don't know whether you can tell. So maybe it's even better visible like this on my finger than in a swatch, because when I swatch it, you can appreciate yourself. It's a very chunky eyeshadow. This needs to be used with a glitter glue. So if you dig this kind of eyeshadow, you definitely need to use this with a glitter glue. I have a couple more eyeshadows here in my Z palette, but before I move into those, because they are matte eyeshadows, I want to talk about one eyeshadow that I've also mentioned before, and that is ColourPop's Tankini. It looks like this. I've talked about Tankini before as well. If you enjoy yellow eyeshadows, you need Tankini. I don't think a lot of companies do yellow very well, especially not yellow in like a metallic shimmery formula, and I think Tankini is probably the best iteration I've seen of an eyeshadow in this color. It is just the happiest yellow you've ever seen. The only thing I would warn you for though, Tankini can apply a little bit sheer, so you do need to layer it a bit, and I would highly recommend layering it over like a matte yellow or over a glitter base, something of the sorts to make it really pop. But once you make it pop, I promise you you're going to have the most happy yellow on your eyelids. Okay, now let's finish up what's in my Z palette here, where I only have a couple of matte eyeshadows left. Let's start with this one from Color Drain over here. This is the shade Squad. And I picked this shade up recently because it's part of their Vivid Bright Pigments, something like this collection. This is brand new to their lineup, and it is the most beautiful petrol teal matte eyeshadow I have ever seen. I have a lot of greens in my collection, and I have quite a few matte greens in my collection, including in loose form. I have nothing like Squad. Squad is incredible. And the last two shades that I wanted to mention from my Z palette here are both from Divina Cosmetics. One of them is a shade you've probably heard a lot of other people talk about if they have Divina eyeshadows, and that is the shade Kourtney. Kourtney is one of those colors that became more popular ever since Subculture was released. It is like that camel mustardy yellow. I really dig shades like this, and I think Kourtney is one of the best and most unique takes on this eyeshadow. It looks absolutely beautiful. And this last eyeshadow from Divina I wanted to mention is in the color Tisbe. I'm going to have that written on the screen for you. Tisbe is a beautiful grayish green. I have seen a lot of greens, like I said, in my life, a lot of matte greens as well, and nothing is quite like this shade because it's a very cool toned grayish sort of green. I know not everyone digs these kind of greens. People prefer to have like the more grassy, mossy type of greens, but if you like a good grey green and you want it in a matte formula, then you want Tisbe. It's gorgeous. And now we can move on into my palettes, because those were all the singles that I wanted to show you. So from my palettes I want to start with the Zuri palette from Zuri Cosmetics. And a truly unique eyeshadow that I wanted to show you from this palette is this beautiful orange tangerine shade over here, which is called Tigress. I love oranges and I love wearing oranges, and I think nothing is quite like this shade. It's super vibrant. When I got this palette, I didn't expect that this shade would be such a unique shade of orange. It's almost like a coral orange. Isn't that gorgeous? Moving into a couple of my Juvia's Place palettes. So from the Deuce palette, there is one shade in here that I think is particularly unique. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. I know I've mentioned this before. But I don't think anything is quite like this beautiful berry orchid shade over here. I've seen a lot of like hot pinks and purples and you know, warm purples and stuff like that. But I don't think anything is like this shade over here, which is called Custard, which looks like this. It's like delicious purple candy. Next up from the Saharan palette is another eyeshadow that I've mentioned before, and it's this beautiful shade over here, which is called Nomad. Nomad is the most beautiful, delicious, creamy, delightful, just so beautiful berry with a bronze shift to it. Not to mention the formula of this eyeshadow is just out of this world. It feels like a cream. It reminds me a little bit of Firefly, the shade that I showed you earlier from Luxie Beauty, but this is much more berry toned. Next up from the Nubian 2 from Juvia's Place, I wanted to show you my favorite shade in this palette, and also a shade that I think is very unique, and that is this green over here, which is called Egypt. If you know me, you know that I like green eyeshadow quite a bit. One would even say green is my favorite eyeshadow color, and yet I have nothing quite in the tones of Egypt. Egypt is such a gorgeous green. Look at that. Again, it has that beautiful creamy foiled metallic formula, and I think just the tone of green of this shade is very unique to my collection. Next I wanted to show you a shade from my Makeup Addiction Cosmetics Meadow palette, and that is this shade over here, which is called Slate Green. Now, Slate Green is an eyeshadow that I've definitely seen done in loose form, and if I dig into my loose indie eyeshadow collection, I'm definitely going to find a shade like this, but I have never ever seen an eyeshadow like this in a pressed form, and I think this is going to be a very unique eyeshadow to a lot of other people's collections. It is a beautiful slate blue with like a greenish gold duochrome to it. Again, very creamy, very shimmery, very foiled. Another eyeshadow from Makeup Addiction Cosmetics, or they call it a highlighter, I call it an eyeshadow, that I feel is very unique is this beautiful green over here. It is called Ivy Lord, and it is such a stunning, vibrant grass green. I'm sure that if I dig into my loose indie eyeshadows, I'm definitely going to find a shade like this, but I don't think I have an eyeshadow quite like this in a pressed form. Look how gorgeous and vibrant. Okay, the last but one shade I wanted to talk to you about is from the Naked Heat palette. You're probably already thinking, girl, are you insane? What's unique in this shadow palette? This shade over here, which is called Amber, and it is also the shade that I'm wearing all over my lids today, and I can almost hear you yelling at your screen now, girl, how can a brown eyeshadow be unique? Granted, I don't have a lot of brown eyeshadows in my collection, but I feel like nothing is quite like Amber. Amber has the most beautiful chocolate reddish brown tones to it, and maybe you're going to think I'm crazy, but I don't have a brown quite like this, and like I said, I don't own a lot of browns, but what I feel like makes this brown so unique to my collection is that it's a brown I want to use. Normally, any other brown in any other eyeshadow palette would be a shade that I just plain ignore and I never wear, but when I dig out this palette, I always want to wear Amber. It's just so stunning and so unique. So you can go ahead and declare me completely insane for claiming that brown eyeshadow can be unique, but I think Amber is unique. And last but not least, the cherry on the pie, the icing on the cake, the crown jewel of my collection, we have my Pat McGrath Sublime palette, where I feel like there's one eyeshadow that is completely unique and there's nothing quite like it that I own in my collection. And I tried duping it, but I was not very successful because I feel like when it comes to the shift and the formula and the intensity, nothing is quite like this shade, and that is the shade VR Nectar over here. I don't know whether you can see how it shifts from a lime green to a pink. Can we just marvel at VR Nectar and agree that it is one of the most beautiful and unique eyeshadows that you've ever seen? I'm trying to shift my hand into the light just so you can see how stunning she is. There you have it. So guys, there you have it. Those were the most unique eyeshadows in my collection from my personal perspective. I would be very curious to know what you consider to be the most unique eyeshadows in your collection, whether you saw something that I showed that you thought, oh well, this is really unique, I would be interested to pick it up. Let's just talk about, you know, our unique eyeshadows in the comment section below. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're interested in more content from yours truly, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!